for this session. I had to twist Darren's arm to come, not because he didn't want to come. It was a matter of trying to massage things so that he could actually fit it in with a busy program. You heard about the ACE lab that Avondale runs. Peter shared with us a bit on that this morning, and Darren's involved with that. We saw, Darren, you on the video there this morning, and was trying to fit around some of those things that are happening for the students. But glad you were able to come and be with us, Darren. Thank you so much for giving up some valuable time to come and share with us. And we look forward to what you've got to present this morning. Just come and join me, or we'll have a prayer, and we'll get into it. Yeah, Father, thank you for the beautiful day you've given us. Thank you for Darren. Thank you for his ministry, for his teaching there at Avondale, and all that he does for the university and the students that are there. And as he shares with us this morning, we pray your Spirit will be here to bless us, to guide us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, brother. Hey, friends, how are you all? That's good. Anyone here yesterday for my presentation? Okay, now I'm going to put you on the spot. I'd love to, part of the education process isn't complete unless there's some reflection on that. So I'd love to hear, and you're going to shout out something new that you learnt yesterday. And this is going to be highly embarrassing if I stand here and everyone goes, nah, drawing a blank. That was yesterday. You remember the Wiggles song? Thank you. The Wiggles came through. And you know what? A big round of applause for all those people who participated. It was thoroughly impressive. We should have captured that on video. We could have got some good mileage out of that. We could have. Anything else? What's that? You learn about perm, that's correct. It's not perma, it's P-E-A-R-M. And what does M stand for? For meaning, that's correct. And I find it really fascinating that at the heart of it, when we look at all of what the scientific literature is telling us about what we humans need to really live our best life, and I know that sounds sort of quite cheesy to say that, but essentially to really flourish in life, what we need is this deep sense of meaning in our lives. And we experience that, in all of the ways that church affords. And I think it's a wonderful thing to discover. So today I was thinking about what I'd like to talk with you about. Now I've sort of pivoted a little bit. I decided yesterday that I actually want to talk about this because there's a little adage that says that the world is full of people who know what to do but don't do what they know. Right? I don't know if this is your experience or not, but often we know the stuff. Like, for example, I know of health professionals, doctors and nurses who smoke, right? Do you think that, I can go to them and say, hey, do you know that smoking is actually bad for your health? And do you think any of them are going to go, are you serious? Like, are you for real? Like, why hasn't anyone ever shared this information with me before? All right? So it's not like we often don't know these things, but doing these things is a completely different story. And so I'm the director of the Lifestyle Medicine and Health Research Centre at Avondale University. We do a lot of research looking at how we can help people to adopt more healthy lifestyles and for their good health. And what I discovered a long time ago is, it's one thing to share information, but how do we actually set people up for success? Right? How do we actually help them to implement those things in their lives? And if you are human, and I'm assuming that most of you here are, then you've probably wrestled with this same thing. And it relates not just about, how to make healthy behaviour stick, but pretty much any behaviour. It might be reading our Bible more regularly or praying more often or whatever it might be. What are the factors, what are the things that determine, why we humans do what we do? And what can we learn about that in terms of how we might be able to set ourselves up for success to maybe do better? And so we're actually going to explore this whole idea of why we humans do what we do. That's another way of stating it. And I want to start by telling you a story. And it's a story about worms. Okay, now I need to tell you, this isn't the friendly garden variety worms. These are these nasty little things that live in your gut. Okay, now here's how the story goes. So it actually is a story that happened. I'm married to Sarah. We've been married, I think, 26 years now. I can honestly say they're 26 of the happiest years of Sarah's life. And I've got some in-laws here, so don't tell her I said that, whatever you do. I'm in big, big trouble because there might not be truth to that. But, sorry, I'm losing my microphone here. So anyway, and we've got 3 kids, so all teenage kids. My youngest is now 16, Caleb. So this happened before kids. So this is the days of dinks, dual income, no kids, living the high life, all that freedom and cash, which is a distant memory. Anyway, so we hadn't been long married, and I was walking past the television set, and there, as I walked past, I saw this one image on the screen which just scarred me. Right? It was the image. The program was about gastrointestinal worms. Right? And I remember just walking past. I had zero interest in this topic, right? And I wasn't paying any attention other than I went, whoa, like this. And I sort of had to look away. I thought, whoa, how can they show that stuff on television? Like, this is wrong. Anyway, I had seriously zero interest in it. So I turned and I kept going about my day and, entirely forgot about it until that night when I lay down in bed and I closed my eyes. And it was like a big screen had been erected on the back of my eyelids. And guess what movie was showing? Worms, right? All I could see was this image that had just been ingrained into my head. You can't unsee certain things. Anyway, I'm looking at this and I'm going, oh man, stop. And I'm thinking about this. And then after a little period of time, all of a sudden I start to feel a bit queasy. Right? Has this happened to anyone else? Like, this is a bizarre thing, is there? I say, you're starting to think about this and I can't stop thinking about it, and I'm feeling a bit ordinary. Anyway, I think, wow, this isn't good. And I thought, I think we need to take action here. So I turned to my loving wife and I said, hey, Sarah, hey, next time you go grocery shopping, because she loves to do that, I said, do you want to get some worming tablets? I've heard that you're meant to do that every now and then. And anyway, being the loving and caring and nurturing wife that she is, she turned to me and smiled and said, I'm not buying worming tablets. She goes, if you want worming tablets, you go and buy worming tablets. All right? And she said, and by the way, you can't get them from the grocery store. You got to go to the chemist for that. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not fronting up to the chemist asking for worming tablets. Right? So I put it behind me. Right? I went through the next day. All was well, except that night I lie down in bed, close my eyelids. Boom! On the big screen again, all I can see are these worms, and I can't stop thinking about these. And then I start feeling worse. And I thought, right, I'm going to have to take action. Now, friends, I want to tell you here, I was displaying no symptoms. This is purely psychosomatic, all right? So let's just clarify from the outset. But in the end, I think I'm going to have to take action. So I live in Currumbong. I've been there at Avondale University for 29 years now. I know, I've been there for a long time. I know the community. People know me in the community. So as I'm driving home from the work that day, I'm driving up a College Drive, and there's a chemist right at the end of the street, Bob Califf Chemist. I know Bob Califf real well. And as I'm driving up, I thought, wait a sec. I'm not walking in to the Bob Califf Chemist, all right, knowing Bobby and asking for worming tablets. So for some bizarre reason, I drive all the way around to Morisset, right, the next town, and I pick the most obscure chemist. There's about 3 of them there. The one that's tucked away that hardly anyone ever goes to, right? And so I'm giving you an insight as to how my crazy mind and works, right? So anyway, eventually I go into this chemist and I walk in, and lo and behold, it's packed. I'm thinking, oh no, why is this happening? So I walk up, and there's this long bench, right, and at this chemist here. And the lady's there serving people behind, and there's a whole lot of people there. And I'm thinking, and I'm feeling pretty anxious about this. And when you get a bit anxious, you start, do we need to adjust something here, brother?
Yep. Just going to put this on.
There we go. Okay. And so anyway, there's this long bench, there's this lady standing behind serving, there are people here, and I'm sort of in the mix, and I'm realising my turn's going to come in a moment, and what am I going to say? And I'm starting to get a bit anxious about this. So I find myself just sort of gravitating right to the end, away from the crowd, to the end of the bench there. And this lady, she's serving up there, and eventually she turns to me and she looks at me, she goes, oh yes, can I help you, sir? And I'm thinking, I'm not just going to announce this to the world, all right? So I find myself just talking really quietly about this, and she's straining to hear, and I can see her cramming, and then eventually she can't hear, she wanders up to this end away from the crowd, and she goes, oh sorry, I didn't catch any of that. And I said, oh yes. I said, well, I'm just wondering if I could buy some, and I'm thinking, wait a sec, The moment I say I want worming tablets, this woman is going to look at me and go, this dude's got worms, right? And I'm feeling pretty anxious about this. So for some bizarre reason that I do not know the answer to this very day, I find myself saying, oh yes, can I please purchase a family, right? I thought, hey, if it sounds like family, it's not for me, right? I'm just doing the responsible thing, caring for the gastrointestinal well-being of my family, right? So I say, can I please purchase a family worming kit, right? Now, I don't know what kit means. I've never done this before, right? And clearly she didn't either, because she was sort of like, she went, whoa, kit. Never heard her referred to as a kit before. But anyway, she goes, okay, kit, family worming kit, all right. So she says, so tell me, that would be for what? No, she goes, yeah, how many in your family, right? Now, I remember standing there and I thought, well, the true answer was one. I want some worming tablets for one person. I thought, I'm not saying that because she's going to go, this dude's got worms. And I was about to say two, because that was the truth of it. There was me and my wife. But I thought, if I say two, it's like 50-50. She's going to be thinking, this dude's got worms, right? So for some bizarre reason, just rolled off the tongue, I say 3. Right? And she goes, okay then. So that would be you, your wife and child. And I'm like, oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, but I've gone, that's correct. Me, my wife and child. And she goes, okay. Well, so I can select the correct product for you, how old is your child? And I'm like, 3. And this lady, she starts to beam because I'm about to learn that she loves kids, right? Little girl or boy? Darling little girl, yeah. What's her name? I love girl names. Little Sophie, little... And this went on, and I'll tell you what, it was just the bizarrest thing. Here I was feeling pretty anxious, right? I'm not, and my brain's spinning, I'm in my head, and I'm doing stuff that's just like snowballing completely out of control. Have you ever had an experience like this? Please comfort me, friends. Right? I remember walking out of the shop with my family worming kit, right, going, what on earth just happened there? What on earth just happened? I've invented a little imaginary family, right? And this poor lady there thinks that this is bizarre. My only consolation, right, in sharing a story like that, and despite the fact that I know that you probably all think I'm very, very odd, but I'm giving you an insight as to how I work. My only consolation is when I read the works of Paul, where he says this. He says, you know what? I don't understand what I do. Can you resonate with that? Are there times when you go, what on earth was I thinking and what was I doing here? He says, for what I want to do, I don't do. What I hate, that I do. And I find this a really powerful insight because within the health literature, this is really where I spend all of my time, we know, once again, to come back, the world is full of people who know what to do but don't do what they know. We humans, we know the good things, we just don't do it. We know the bad things, but we tend to do that, right? And, give or take. So what can we learn about that? What can we do about that? And so I spend a lot of my time now immersed in, what is called the behaviour change literature, right? Because there's a lot of studies done on trying to understand why we humans do what we do and how we can actually change that. And what is fascinating, I remember, so basically here's what happened. When I talk about, adopting healthy behaviours, seldom do I see an audience look like that. Right? I'm going to stand up here today and we're going to talk about exercise. Seldom do I see people, can hardly wait. Right? What I tend to see is something a little more like this. You know what I'm talking about here? You resonate? And so this is, if you experience that, if you feel like that, I just want to say you're human. That's okay. Right? We're all like that. But what can we do about it? Well, I remember when I saw this study come out, this was in 2015, and you can see that the title of this article here, published in Health Psychology Reviews, it says, Theories of Behaviour and Behaviour Change Across the Social and Behavioural Sciences, a scoping review. What they'd done is they said, let's have a look at all of the literature, all the science, and what it tells us about how we can help people to, change their behaviours, to adopt healthier habits. And as I said, it doesn't just relate to health behaviours, it's any behaviour that we might be engaged with. And I thought, at last, Someone's done it. Someone's actually sort of going to, do this scoping review, pull everything that we know together into one nice little bite-sized chunk so that we can, really just make the most of it. And so after their review, this is what they concluded. There are about 82 different theories. And I remember looking at it going, well, thanks for nothing. Like, you didn't make it simpler at all. However, they said, you know what happens if you look at these 82 theories on why we humans do what we do and why we behave the way that we do, there's actually some common themes. And so what we have been able to do is pull all of the themes together and simplify it, that word simplify it, into one nice little model. You want to see what the model is? Because we all love simple models, don't we? Right? This is going to end all of the world's problems. We're going to figure out why we do what we do, how we can fix it, and we can just get on and be better people, all right? So here's the simple model for you. There you go. Right? Is that helpful? Has that fixed it? And you know what I love about this simplified model that they've created? You can see there's a whole heap of stuff in there. There's environmental constraints, perceived control, injunctive norms, there's behavioural beliefs. And right at the end, they go, yeah, we know that we've forgot some stuff. So they just put a little thing that says other factors. All right? So, yeah, this is all the stuff we know that influences how people behave. But there's other stuff too. We're just not quite sure. We haven't figured that out. So we've got other factors. And so here is one of the key takeaways, is that we humans are incredibly complex creatures. We're hard to understand, right? It's hard to get good clarity on why we do what we do, let alone actually do stuff to change that. However, there are some other researchers that have done some work and said, you know what, that's not simple enough. And they've actually come up with some even simpler models that I think are quite simple. And I think that from these simpler models, there's some good takeaways. And I want to share one particular model with you. And I hope this doesn't get too sciencey for you. But this is very evidence-based in its approach. There's a thing, you can read that. That's right, that's a good start, isn't it? When you can read the words. There's a thing called the theory of planned behaviour. And I actually quite like this model because I think it captures the essence of what we can do to actually change the way that we behave. And what it says is this. It says, really, our behaviours start with us getting intentional. Right? They start with us actually going, you know what, I want to make a change. And what we now know, and this is a really quite powerful insight, there's a lot of work now done on health coaching. And what we're discovering, and here's the epiphany that comes out of the health coaching literature, is that if people don't want to change, guess what? They're not going to change. And, for years and years, and I'm sure that you've been in this position where you go to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, this is what you need to do, right? And it's like, I'm the expert, you're the patient, you listen up and you better change your behaviour. And you watch what people's body language does. They do exactly what Brett's doing right now. They cross their arms, right? And you can tell by everything that's being said that they're not going to do it. So what we're discovering here is that unless people want to change, they're not going to change, right? Not rocket science, but it took us many, many years to figure that out. However, there are times when people do want to change. When people say, you know what, I actually would like to adopt new behaviours, whatever they might be. And I want to get intentional about doing that, right? So this theory of planned behaviour says behaviour change starts with getting intentional about that. And so here's the question. What would drive people's intentionality about making new behaviours? And what the theory of planned behaviour says is that there are actually only three things. Right? Three things. That's simple enough, isn't it? Okay, well, let's look at what these three things are. The first one, it says, is our attitudes. So your attitudes towards a certain thing will influence how intentional you are about behaving a certain way. So in other words, our attitudes, or another name for that are our beliefs, can actually drive our behaviours. I want to illustrate this. Is there anyone here that is brave enough to come up the front and, who is super, super punctual? Someone who is always on time. Maybe an adult. Oh, if someone's picking on you, you know what? You can even stay where you are if you like. But can I borrow this microphone? Okay, so I have a little thought experiment. What's your name? Jennifer. There you go. You can have a mic, Jennifer. Give Jennifer a round of applause for being so brave. Okay, so here you go, Jennifer. We're going to play a bit of a thought experiment here. So let's say that you've organised to meet someone at 10 o'clock, 10 a.m.
Yep.
And you're driving there and all of a sudden, roadworks.
Yep.
And you're looking at this and you're going, uh-oh, and then, your phone just went dead. You have no way, no, this is bad, isn't it? So you have no way of contacting this person whatsoever. And you know that you're probably going to get there about 15 minutes late now. So you're sitting in the traffic, right, waiting to get through this roadworks. Tell me about how you're behaving. Is there any difference, any signs in your behaviour that are different?
Hanging onto the steering wheel really, really tight.
You're tight. Okay, isn't this interesting? So, because that's going to get you there faster, isn't it? If you hang on tight and if you lean forward, hey, you're going to get there. You're quicker. You're closer to the destination, are you? Yeah?
Yes.
And what about that person who they should have gone, but they didn't?
I might have said some words.
Really? You might you silly duffer?
Yes.
Yes. Right, so all of a sudden we start to see behavioural change, don't we?
It's like, get out of the road.
Get out of the road. What are you people thinking? Okay, so now my question to you, why are you starting to behave like that? What's happening in here?
Because I'm not going to be on time.
Yeah, okay, but why? Are you stressed? How are you feeling?
My heart's beating faster.
Your heart's doing this?
I'm breathing faster.
Yep.
I'm tense.
You're tense, all of these things. So here's what's happening. You've got stressed, right? You're anxious. And because of that, you are now, because of that, those feelings, they're driving certain behaviours, aren't they?
Yeah.
Right? And what we know is a lot of what we humans do, we do for a feeling, right? To avoid pleasure to achieve pleasure or avoid pain. But here's my question for you. Why are you feeling that way? Why are you stressed out?
Because I'm not going to do what I should be doing.
Tell me more about that. You're not going to do what you should be doing. What does that mean?
Oh, yeah, I'm letting somebody down.
You're letting someone down. Oh, okay.
It could be myself,
right,
and the other person.
Right. So you're letting yourself down. You're letting them down.
Yeah.
And so, because that's occurring, you're feeling really anxious about this, and then that's causing you to behave a certain way.
Yeah.
So my question is to you: who told you that it's letting them down? Where did you get that from? Why do you have that belief?
I don't know.
Born like that.
You were born like that.
I've always been like that. Yes.
Yeah.
I was late many years ago getting a girl to the airport.
Right.
Because there was an accident on the bridge.
Yeah.
She missed her plane.
Right.
So now I'm at the airport 5 hours in advance.
Right.
Even if it's Newcastle Airport from Coorabong.
Even if it's Newcastle to Coorabong. Yeah. Now, isn't this fascinating? You know what this is illustrating? And thanks for... I'll tell you a story of my mum, okay? So my mum, love my mum to death. But if she was running 10 minutes late in the exact same scenario, she wouldn't be behaving any differently. And if you asked her if she was stressed, she'd say no. And and I know that you'd be going, really? What kind of a person is that? But here's the interesting thing. If you drill down and said, why aren't you stressed? She would say something like this. She would say, people appreciate it if you're 10 minutes late because it gives them more time to be ready. This is the truth. This is the truth, right? So here's the interesting thing. I'm going to flash this up. Can we put this up on the screen? Thank you so much. Give her a round of applause for being a good sport. But here's the interesting thing. Can you see what's going on here? Your attitudes / your beliefs are actually the reference for how you think, right? I'm letting someone down. I'm letting myself down because you have a belief that that's what being punctual means. Then your thoughts influence how you feel, and your feelings drive how you behave. Can you see this? I find this really fascinating quote. This is Jesus. This is a Message paraphrase. But he says this. Jesus says to them, this is the blind man. He says, do you really believe I can do this? Right? What he's asking about are their beliefs. Right? What are your attitudes about this? What are your beliefs about this? Do you believe I can do this? And they said, yes, we believe that you can. And he says, okay then, well, become what you believe. Isn't this fascinating? Why? Because what you believe, your attitudes, influence how you think, feel, and behave. You become what you believe. Does that make sense? And my challenge to you, we've just picked on a fairly a benign, sort of innocuous sort of an example, whether you're punctual or not. But what I can tell you, and this is what we know, is that in every single one of your brains, including mine, there are a whole host of beliefs and attitudes that have been carved in there, and they are shaping how you think, feel, and behave. And some of them are pretty benign. You know what? I have a belief that blue is a great colour. And guess what it means? Most of my shirts are blue, right? Because, what's that? But you know what? That's a fairly small thing. But some beliefs are incredibly powerful and have a tremendous impact on how we think, feel, and believe. The most tragic one is that when people get a belief or attitude in here that they are unlovable, right? When that happens, how they think, feel, and behave reflects all of that. And in fact, what we tend to do is come back to what we believe. Right? I could talk for a long time about this, and we don't have time to do that. But what I can tell you is that the psychology, the secular psychology, is showing that our beliefs drive our behaviours in ways that you don't even imagine, that you don't even think about, because they serve as the reference for how you think, feel, and behave. Does that make sense? Right, so the question is then, hey, if we want to start changing behaviour, maybe we need to not just focus on the behaviour, maybe we need to start looking further upstream. Right? What are the beliefs? What are the attitudes that actually are driving those behaviours in the first place? And how can we do that? Well, education can help here. You know, there's that adage that I said to you at the start, you know, the world is full of people who know what to do but don't do what they know. That's been used as a way of saying education doesn't matter. Right? If people know this stuff anyway and they don't do it, doesn't matter. But that's not true. You know, education does matter when it changes your attitudes and your beliefs, right? When that's transformative education. When people really start to learn new things that makes them think different, feel different, behave differently. Does that make sense? So education is really important. You know, I'm so glad that you came in, and I'm hoping, you know, and I started this session by saying, what did you learn yesterday? And we sort of like, we can put the wiggles on, yeah, that's right. But, you know, these things, sometimes it can just be a small bit of information that's enough to go, hey, you know what, I'm going to think differently about that now, which makes me feel differently, which is going to cause me to behave differently. So education does make a difference. Also, what we now know is that credible sources are a powerful influencer of our attitudes and beliefs about ourselves. I'll give you an example of this. I watched the Eliud Kipchoge. Does anyone know what he did? What he's famous for? Eliud Kipchoge. He ran a marathon. He ran a marathon in under 2 hours. All right? He's the Olympic marathon champion, and then he has this special thing set up. He actually had pacers run with him. They were all in front of him. They had a Tesla electric car drive in front with beaming a light so that they could be exactly on pace. They found a flat course, perfectly flat in Germany. It was a race car track, and they did laps of this, and he ran a marathon in under 2 hours, which is phenomenal. Like, literally, that is running over 20 kilometres an hour for 2 hours. He ran an hour, 59 minutes and 40 seconds. Now, when I watch that, or when I watch the Olympics, I like to run, right? I enjoy running. When I watch that, do you think that it makes me think differently and believe differently about what I'm capable of doing? So. I don't sit there going, wow, he just ran sub 2 hour marathon. I reckon I could do that. Right? It doesn't change my belief. Why? Because he's an incredible source. Right? He's not really a credible source to me. Whereas, what do you think happens when my friend says to me, who's much like me, say he's the same age as me, and we're quite similar, and, you know, we exercise together, and then all of a sudden he starts some new thing, and he trains a bit more, and he starts to get faster, and he now breaks some, you know, barrier, or, you know, he ran 35 minutes for 10K, or something that I want to be able to do. What do you think? Does that change? Does that have the potential to change what I believe about myself? Yeah. Why? Because he's not an incredible source. He's actually a credible source. He's relatable to me. And so what we know is that one powerful way to help people shift their behaviours, right, and through their attitudes and beliefs, is actually to connect with people who have done that thing that you're hoping to do. right? There's something really powerful about that. Do you know, if you look at dietitians giving advice for weight loss, right? Who do you think is more successful, a size 8 dietitian or a size 14 dietitian? It's the second one. Why? Because someone who's, say, struggling with their weight and they sit in front of someone who's a size 8 and goes, oh, all you got to do is da-da-da-da-da, you know, for that person, they're almost an incredible source. They're not credible to them. It's like, you actually have no idea what it's like for me. You know, this is a real challenge. Whereas if you have, say, someone who's a size 14 who says, you know what, I used to be a size 20, right? And daily, this is a challenge for me, but this is what I've been able to do. And you know what, I was able to do it, and I reckon you could too. Right? We know that gives people a lot more hope, right, of transformation. So that whole idea of credible sources, and you know, I'm trying to put this in the context of if you're wanting to change your behaviour and you're wanting to look upstream, and you know, how can I change the attitude and belief around that? Who do you know who's done it already? You know, who are those people that are a bit like you that are already gone ahead? Right? That can be a really powerful source of motivation. And then this last bit, and this relates to a comment I made before. You know, what we know is that at the very heart of it, we humans need to know that we matter, you know, that we have that sense of value and worth. If you don't see your worth, your self-worth and your value, then it's very unlikely that you're going to follow through on any sort of positive things or healthy things. You know, there's a lot of literature now coming up, and it's just so telling. On what's referred to as ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And in fact, it's even getting to the point now where they're saying as a standard consult, people should be asked about, you know, adverse childhood experiences, whether they've experienced neglect or abuse in their younger years. Why? Because it shapes our attitudes and our beliefs. And that in turn influences. We know that people who have high levels of, you know, a number of ACEs when they're very young, later in life they are more inclined to experience cancer, diabetes, there's smoking, mental health conditions. The list goes on and on. Why? Because our attitudes and our beliefs shape very, very powerfully our flow on to our behaviours. Does that make sense? So here's the thing, you know, just to get the model back, our simple model back into perspective. If you want to change your behaviour, right, and you want to get intentional about doing it, then maybe not start, but one of the things you really need to address are what are the upstream attitudes and beliefs I have around that. That's one place to start. So, number 1, attitudes. Number 2, the theory of planned behaviour says that a huge influencer on our intentions and our behaviours are what's referred to as our social norms. Right? So these are the expectations, if you like, of the community that we belong to, the community we belong to. I know someone who's a nurse, and she was telling me this story. She said, I started work at this particular factory. I wasn't nursing at the time. Everyone in that factory smokes. All right, and they'd go off and have their smoko, and then, you know, that's where you chatted and connected. And she said, and against all of my better judgment, she actually started smoking. Why would that be? Because you're all of a sudden in this community where that's what we do, right? And when there's these social norms, you know, when there's social expectations, that's just part of the way we do life, then you are a lot more inclined to adopt that and identify with that. So, you know, what's one of and actually I'll say this, and I did mention this yesterday, but this literature I think is incredibly powerful. This is all based on social network analyses. This was actually a study that was done in Framingham, Massachusetts, where they had about 5,000 people. And they've actually they commenced these studies in 1950, and they've been following them now for about 60 years. It's an intergenerational study. Every dot in there represents a person. And every line represents how the different people in that social network are connected. And they've done this very sophisticated data analysis. And what they've been able to find is that if you look at things like obesity, if you look at things like mental health, these things are highly contagious, right? They are contagious conditions. So much so, they actually spread 3 degrees of separation. So if you look into social network, you'll find that if this person will affect that person that they're connected to, and then that person will affect that person that they're connected to, and that person will affect that person they're connected to, which means this person here, through no direct contact at all, influences that one there. This is your friends of your friends' friends. Right? Do you know that in a social network, if you have someone who, say, gains weight, their friends of their friends' friends, if they're the same sex, it has about a 10% increased chance of gaining weight as well. Right? The extent to which we're connected, we never, previously imagined. And what this speaks to is the power of others, and connecting with others. We're designed for relationship. And what it also says is that if you want to instigate change, if you want to actually create new sort of healthy behaviours and be intentional about that, be careful of the friends you choose. Now, this is, I don't know how to say that politely, but this is why we parents, I've got 3 teenage kids, we worry about who they're spending time with, or we delight in who they're spending time with. And so immerse yourself in an uplifting community. This is one of the key secrets. Go along. We've got these health initiatives. If healthy behaviours is one of the things you're wanting to adopt, we've got these health programs that are run in churches. Get along there. You're going to be immersed with people, and together feels better. You're going to be with people who are on the similar journey, supporting the same thing. We need each other to be our best and do our best. That's the bottom line. So social norms plays a really important part. So do it with others. Find those people that are on the same journey and seek out particularly those positive influences. Makes a huge difference to our ultimate health outcomes and behaviours. Does that make sense? So, number 1, what's a first thing that you can think about, trying to give attention to in order to modify intention and behaviour? Top of the list, it says what? Our attitudes and beliefs. Right? So shifting those attitudes and beliefs is very powerful. Number 2, the social norms. Yeah, the groups that we're contained with. There is genius in church. There's a reason God invented church, as messy as it is, right? Because we're full of people, who do unpredictable things. And, as I said with my little story at the start, I don't understand why I do some of the things I do, let alone why you guys do some of the things that you do. Put that all together, it's messy. It's messy, but God wants us to do it for a good reason. And I actually think that one of the tragedies of COVID is that we had almost a dismantling of that. And I think that we need to get intentional about coming together again. There is something very, very powerful about being in the presence of other people who are on a positive journey. Right? And that's what church is meant to be all about, isn't it? So, attitudes, social norms, and then this last one is what's referred to as perceived control. And what this basically says is that if you don't think you are capable of that, you are very unlikely about getting intentional about acting on that and doing something about it. So I'll give you, here's an example. This relates to physical activity, which I spend a lot of my time. Can you see that if this is what is referred to as perceived barriers? So if you say to someone, they said, I want to become more active. And you say, okay, what barriers stand in your way? What do you perceive as barriers in your way? If people have no barriers, they go, there's nothing stopping me. Well, then there's probably about a 43% chance that they're not going to do anything anyway. All right? But for every addition of a new perceived barrier, like they go, I've got a problem because I'm time poor. I just don't have the time to do it. And I've got a really dodgy knee. And so every one of these perceived barriers, as they begin to mount, you just see that the likelihood of people actually acting and following through on those behaviours gets less and less and less. And so, in other words, what we need a sense of hope. And I said this yesterday and I say it again, hope is my favourite word. I think hope, when people have a sense of hope, like, I could actually do that. That is possible. I could expect positive things in the future. When people need a sense of hope to actually follow through and be intentional. Hope is amazingly powerful. If you ever read a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Has anyone, raise your hand if you've heard this or read this book? It's just a small little book, very, very insightful. It was actually written by, Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist, Austrian psychiatrist, who got caught up in the whole atrocity of the Second World War. He was actually taken to one of the death camps by the Nazis, and in that camp, because he was a doctor, he was not just a participant in this. He almost basically had to provide and care for the other people, the prisoners that were dying and suffering as well. And it caused him to reflect on, what is this about? And he wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. But there's this really fascinating little paragraph he talks about. He said, in between Christmas Day and New Year's in 1944, as we know the war finished in 1945, he says between Christmas and New Year there was a disproportionate number of people that perished in the camp. And he said, and I was trying to get my head around why has this happened. He said the rations hadn't changed, the work conditions hadn't changed, there'd been no, weather interruptions, there'd been no pandemic that had swept through or anything like that. He says, but just a disproportionate number of people perished. And he said, and then it dawned on me. He said, we'd heard rumours that the Allies were coming, and we all believed we'd be home by Christmas. And with hopes dashed, people perish. We need a sense of hope. People need a sense of hope. And I think that, young people, all people, we need to be speaking that hope more often. And certainly we know, from a behaviour change perspective, people need hope. They need that sense of, I can do it. There is hope. There is that I have control over the ability to actually follow through on that. Without that, people won't even try. So how do we cultivate that? Well, we can do things like this. Set yourself up for success. Right? I used to do talks to people about, getting more active. And I'd like, yeah, we can do it. And then you can get people revved up. Get on people on a bit of an emotional high. And I could probably get most people to go walking the next day, I reckon. But then if I followed you up the day after, who went walking day 2? It's like 50% maybe. Like, who went walking day 3? Why is that? Well, it's because if we set too high a bars for ourselves, right, and what it does is actually it becomes unattainable for us. And all it teaches us is that we can't actually do it. And so one bit of advice I'd say to you, if you're ever considering launching into some new, lifestyle behaviours or, Bible study, or whatever it might be, some new behaviours, don't set the bar too high in the first instance, right? Set something that's realistic that you can be successful with, right? Because what happens is that as you succeed at something, then it grows your perceived control, right? Another name for it we call self-efficacy, right? It actually grows in you a belief that I think I can actually do this. And for me, one of the most rewarding things is to see people who, might be way back here on their journey, but have sort of go, I really want to get intentional about making some changes. And we just give them small challenges, and that small challenge, they have a win at it, and all of a sudden it's like, wow. And you see their eyes start to come alive again. All right, there is hope being reinstated. I can do that, and they can try something a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. So whenever you're embarking upon a behaviour change journey, don't do something crazy like, I'm going to run a marathon next weekend, and the lead up to it, I'm going to do this and that. And, just start small, have some good wins, something that you can succeed with. And then celebrate that success. Right? Be proud of yourself. Yeah, you know what? I was able to do that. I didn't eat 2 Big Macs today. Whatever it might be. So just, if you can set yourself up for success and then celebrate that. And you know what? Everyone needs a cheer squad. Everyone needs a cheer squad. Anyone remember this guy? Remember Richard Simmons? I think it was like back in the 80s. He's still around. He's still going. He owns a gym over in LA somewhere or other. But his claim to fame, he actually would just get people, and basically he was just a really encouraging dude. He'd do aerobic activities and like, you can do it. And he had all these records cut, on the old vinyl records he could play. It was like, all this stuff. But basically he was just a great encourager. And people warm to that. I actually think that one of the greatest things that we can offer people is encouragement. I remember I probably shouldn't talk too much about my mum, but these are all good things. This is a good thing. My mum, one of the greatest gifts she gave me and my brother is she was just always encouraging. She always, even we'd come home and go, Mum, guess what we got on our maths test? And, we just got, say, 80%. We were stoked, and she'd go, 98%. And we're like, oh, 80%. She'd go, 80%? That's totally amazing. You guys are so smart, and just everything. Mum was always speaking encouragement. She's always a cheer squad. Everyone needs a cheer squad. So find a cheer squad. And probably even more importantly, be a cheer squad. Right? It'll come back to you. So to sort of start to culminate this thing up a little bit, if we want to change our behaviours, right? Because we're all crazy people, we all do strange things in strange ways, we're hard to understand, it's even harder to change some of the things that we do. But these are some of the stepping stones, some of the key blocks that we know that are important. Help to think differently about it, change your beliefs about it, your attitudes towards it. Surround yourself with uplifting, social support and social environments. Go on a journey with people that are doing the same as you and have succeeded. And then set yourself up for success, right? Do what you can to recreate hope. If you failed before, well, you know what? That was before. Right? What's something new, small thing, a small win that you might be able to have to help create that sense of perceived control? Now, to finish this, what I do want to say is that even the best of intentions. So even if you had all those three things going for you, you'd reframed, you had some good beliefs that were serving you well, they weren't limiting you, you had good social support, you believed you could do it, there's still a tendency for us humans with the best of intentions not to follow through. You know what I'm talking about here? Anyone have this happen? Yes, you're human, good, well done, keep being human. But what goes on then, and what we know is that there seems to be two things in particular that can derail that sort of intentions translating to behaviours, and here they are. Number one is an unsupportive environment, and I'm talking specifically here about a physical environment. So, for example, people, we do work with, through the research centre, we've done stuff in like Indigenous communities, right, helping people to, they have massive sort of problems with diabetes and that in certain rural communities. And we talk about eating healthier, more fruits and vegetables, and then guess what? There aren't any. So all of a sudden, if you have an unsupportive environment, it's really hard to follow through on those best of intentions. If you say, I'm going to move more, right? Because I know that moving more is really good for my brain and my body. And yet you have a job that involves you sitting down and you can't move from that desk for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. It makes it hard, right? So here's the question. How could you potentially re-engineer your environment, right, so that it sets you up for success? And this isn't always easy, but I have a standing workstation, for example. I don't stand all day when I'm working at it because I do have to do a lot of writing. So I have a thing that at least I get to stand up a bit. Do you know what I actually have? My printer, I have located 2 stories down. My office is in the upstairs in the auditorium. The printer is in the bottom stairs, underneath the auditorium. And you know what it involves? I print this thing, I have to run down the stairs, or walk down the stairs, go down the stairs. Oh, it didn't work. I have to go back up again. I have to print it again. And you know what? It's an inconvenience, and it's a beautiful inconvenience. All right? Sometimes you actually have to inconvenience yourself to set yourself up for best success. In workplaces, I do quite a bit of work in workplace environments too. They'll say, we want people to start eating healthier. And I go, right there, smack bang in front of the main, lunch area is a vending machine that has all sorts of goodies in there. I go, okay, step number 1, just relocate that down to the distant shores of, they still have it available. People, they should, people can choose. We can't, tell people what they can and can't do. But they're going to have to take a cut lunch to get there in order to get that thing, right? Inconvenience it. Whereas we know that, for example, if you create a supportive environment where you have a fruit bowl on your desk, particularly if the fruit's cut up, isn't it? This is what we humans are like. Oh, there's a pear there. I can't be bothered, biting it. Oh, it's cut up for me now. Okay, now I'm up for eating it, right? So, if you can re-engineer an environment, we actually call it nudging behaviour in the behaviour change space. If you can re-engineer your space so that you are sort of encourage, the healthy options or the behaviours that you're wanting to instigate, you become easy. They're easy to instigate, whereas the other ones are harder to do. If you get creative with that can be really helpful. So that's one thing. Unsupportive environments, try and re-engineer your environment to make it supportive. And then the last one, and this is probably, I think, something that we can all absolutely resonate. You can have the best of intentions, but often why it doesn't follow through to behaviours is because you just don't feel like it. You know what I'm talking about here? why? We just said, maybe it's been a big day. I thought, when I get home today, I'm just going to go and I'm going to, go for a walk. And then I get home and I go, I just don't feel like it. Or I may have said, I'm going to get home tonight and I'm going to eat a really healthy meal. But when I get home, I really feel like pizza. These feelings, our emotional state is a really big driver of this gap, we call it, between intentions and behaviours. And stress is a huge one of that. And what we now know, if you look at rates of, say, mental, distress, it more than doubled during COVID. And it was already astronomically high anyway. And so we know that things like stress, or another name for stress is really anxiety, these are major modulators of people's behaviours. It's interesting, do you know what anxiety, what it actually gears us up to do is fight, flight or freeze. Right? You all heard that before, haven't you? The whole fight or flight. And basically what happens, it's a God-given reaction. When we're faced with a situation that's like alarming to us, right, stressful for us, our response is, hey, let's fight our way out of it, or let's run away from it, or let's just, some of us freeze in panic. And what we see is the exact same thing happening with our behaviours. Often when we get stressed, when we get anxious, it'll manifest as either we get angry because we're trying to, fight our way out of it or flee it, or we just become completely disabled. Can't be bothered now. I can't move. Just someone pass that pizza over. So what we know is that caring for, ourselves emotionally and trying to set ourselves up for success, at an emotional level makes a massive influence too on our ability to follow through on our intentions and translate them to behaviours. So, friends, you've done well. You've actually done well to hang in there because this is pretty heady. It's a bit sciencey. But I've tried to just distill this down into some key practical takeaways. Most of us are interested in making some sort of behaviour change at some point in our lives. I am, right? As we can always sort of, be moving this direction in terms of, how we do life. And the journey in trying to achieve that, here's some really key things to keep in mind. What attitudes, what beliefs do you have that are currently driving your behaviours? What might it look like to get re-educated, or face them, or confront them, or challenge them, and so that you actually see some downstream changes in behaviours? What's your social context like at the moment? Who are your friends? Are they supporting? Are they sort of exemplifying as the type of things that you value and that you want to represent? Right? Maybe sometimes we need new friends. And I actually think that, even as I say that, I sort of cringe a little bit because it sounds a bit ordinary, but there's almost a biblical precedent for that. I think of Jesus walking along going, hey, you know what, they don't want to hear it. Okay, well, let's go this way. Dust it off. But, I'm not saying you to disband your social network entirely either, but we need uplifting social influences in our lives. Increased self-efficacy. What is just a small couple of things that you could do? Maybe even just one thing to start that you could be successful at, right? That could give you a little win, right? Maybe that's your challenge. That's your takeaway that I give you from this. What's one thing you could do that you could be successful with? Well, go and do that and celebrate that. And then think about what the next thing might be. And then create supportive environments, immerse yourself in that as much as you're able. And be kind to yourself emotionally. What can you do? If you're, prone to to anxiety or stress, what are some things that you can sort of, take away to help mitigate that, help to relieve that? So there's my little to-do list. And, even as I say, I shouldn't have written as to-do because I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm just throwing this stuff here for you, and hopefully there's some things that you can glean from it. Hey friends, it's been really cool being with you. I flew up yesterday. I've got to fly back very shortly, back to Currumbog. But I just want to say just a couple of things about Avondale. I've been there 29 years now. Honestly, Avondale is one of the best kept secrets in Australia. And if you've got young people, we really care about this stuff. I don't know if you heard, but this is hugely exciting. It should have been shouted from the rooftops. But about 3 weeks ago, the government ran a survey across every university in Australia, and on a number of different things, about 40 universities, and Avondale University ranked number one for student experience, overall student experience. Bond University got number 2 position. They'd held number 1 for the 16 previous years. They're not happy, right? But we are, all right? And, you know, why is that? Why is Australia's newest university... Thank you. Why is it? What you think? Well, what's contributed to that? And I actually believe there are a number of factors that contributed to it. But one of it is that we see, you know, Avondale exists in my mind to inspire and equip for service. Right? That's what it's all about. And what we got very intentional. You talk about intentionality. One of the things that we got very intentional about 5 years ago now was embedding wellbeing education and wellbeing support. You know, creating all of these things, embedding all of these things into the student experience so that we could actually get young people, and we have postgraduate students, but our students to be in a really good place so that they could give, right? Because you can't pour from an empty cup. And so this whole big drive and this big emphasis on wellbeing, I think it's been a key factor that's contributed to it, as well as the fact, you know, we've got small class numbers so the students really get to interact with their staff. We have staff that really care. It's not just a career for them, it's a calling. That makes a huge difference. But there's a heap of really exciting things happening at Avondale, and I think the fact that, you know, we get ranked number 1 like that, we can be immensely proud of it. We really can. We actually also created another program this year to really even take that wellbeing initiative to the next level. We created a thing called the ACE Lab, and I know you may have seen about that. I'm involved with it. It's called the Avondale Character Experience Laboratory, because, you know, Ellen White says the true purpose of education is to grow the character. And so what we do is we take these students on a host of different character development initiatives through belonging, you know, social connection, through challenge. We take them outdoors. On Friday, we're taking a group of 30 students to hike the entire overland track through Tasmania. Through service activities, they get mentorship. It's a great place. And next year, I know you've probably heard all this going around, for anyone doing, any first year student that comes to Avondale, they're going to get the first 18 months free in the dormitories. All of them will get free access to the ACE Lab experience, which means they get this trip to Tasmania. The students don't pay a thing, right? It's because we prioritise and value this so much. So there's a lot of really positive, great things happening at Avondale. My daughter's there this year. She's honestly living her best life. We hardly ever see her. I live really close to the campus, but she's living in the dorms because we wanted that for her. And it's like, hey, Liv, you're still having fun? And she's like, yep, I'm off to the next thing now. But yeah, my son's going there next year. He's just finishing year 12. So, you know, if you know of young people that really need their life taken to the next level, really look into what's happening there. It's a special place. So, brothers and sisters, lovely connecting with you, chatting with you. Thanks for attending, and bye for now.
Thanks so much, Darren. That was great. The material, you make it so accessible, and I think that's really motivational, so thank you. Just on the Avondale thing, there's an Avondale booth down in the Expo Hall, so if you want further information, if you've got children, grandchildren that are perhaps looking at what they might do next for tertiary education, be sure to check out the Avondale booth in the Expo Hall. But thank you again, Darren. Let's give Darren one more round of applause. Thank you so much. And let me just pray as we close. Father, thank you so much for Big Camp, for what we're seeing happening here on the grounds as your Spirit moves. Thank you so much for Darren and his presentations to us. And Lord, when we think about behaviour change, there's so many things that we do. We don't know what we do or why we do it sometimes. But Lord, help us as we make changes for the better, to be positive and apply these principles that we've learnt under your Spirit. Bless Darren as he goes from here, all that he has to do, and bless Avondale as well, a great place for our young people. And we just commit our time to you in Jesus' name. Amen.